Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 403. 403. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'll be the chairman for tonight's program. Being Friday, we'll be dealing with some constitutional and legal case law matters. Of course, we have a pattern that we carry out as a part of the process for our show. And we normally start with a short prayer, after which we do a little scripture reading. I'll bow my head for the moment and say a short prayer. Divine loving Father, we thank thee for the privilege that thou hast granted us to be here today. We hope that whatever we have to say may it accrue to the best interest and well being of our country of Belize, its people at home and abroad, and others. We also pray that thou would continue to guide and protect and bless us, that thou would be merciful unto us, the knowest our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts. We pray that thou must accept the words of our mouth and the meditation of our mind and the contriteness of our heart, now and always. Please bless this program and please bless our family members, friends, and loved ones wherever they are, as if they were mentioned by name and number. Please continue to be merciful unto us all, for we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much for allowing us to indulge in our prayerfulness. And at this point, what I'll do is just take the Bible, open it up, and hopefully we get a nice passage. And we'll just go ahead and read the first part that we come across, which is Psalms 105. And it reads as follows: Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the people. Sing unto him, sing psalms unto him. Talk ye of all his wondrous works. Glory ye in his holy name. Let the heart of them rejoice that seeketh the Lord. And we'll say amen to that. Let the heart of those who rejoices in the Lord, who seeketh the Lord, be happy and be blessed. Tonight's program, we'll have no announcements for tonight. We'll just go straight into the program because we expect to have a packed program. And we might run out of time to complete it. Hopefully not. Uh, as I indicated earlier, on Fridays we usually do what you call a constitutional and legal case law show. We have been attempting to do that on a regular basis ever since we started. On some occasions, we have not been able to pursue that particular objective because of other pressing and urgent matters, relating to issues of the country, and we have deferred on some occasions uh, the time allotted for these kind of teachable moment issues because we are aware that most of our people in the country are not familiar with the Constitution, and that the leaders whom were elected to take care of our governance affairs have taken it upon themselves without our acquiescence and or being informed adequately to grant them that authority because that authority is vested in us, the people of the country. Whenever they're going to do anything that is critically important, especially such as mass deviations from the Constitution and or the evisceration of the Constitution in its totality, it is mandated and required that there shall be a referendum. Nobody is asking, nobody is begging. What we are doing, according to our Constitution, is to tell them, those who are in charge of our governance affairs, what we expect of them and what they're commanded to do, not if they want to. The Constitution says that whenever there's an occasion where the government wishes to make deviate from our constitutional rights under Section 3 of the Constitution, all the way through Section 19, inclusive of Section 20 for judicial review, the government, under under the under the Referendum Act and the People's constitutional rights under Section 9, it is required under Section 9 of the recommendation of the People's Act, they shall have a referendum so that people may say yes or no in regards to what they would like to do or attempt to do. They are not vested with all the powers in the country. They are reserved powers that the Governor General has, the head of state has. They are reserved powers that the people have. And the government is mandated by constitutional prescripts to come to the people and to have a plebiscite, to have a referendum in which the people will have the final say in regards to tampering with any of the fundamental rights or any of the human rights, civil rights, and others, by the way. So we'll start off tonight by, let me see. Let me see. I think I have it here already. I was about to go look for it somewhere else, but I think I have it available here. So let me turn this instrument on and then, yeah, okay. So I'll start tonight's program by reading last division to just for a second. Yeah, okay. That's the preamble. I don't want to read the preamble right now. I just want to get to it. Part 1, Section 2, Subsection 1. That's what I want to get at. I hope I have done. I'm all the way at Part 2 already. Just for a second. Okay. Part 1, Section 2, Subsection 1 reads as follows. This Constitution, being the Constitution of Belize, by the way, which is what I'm reading, an electronic version of it, which is what I have in my hand. That's what I'm about to read. It says, this Constitution is the supreme law of Belize. And please remember that, because I'm going to be making reference to that or making statements that alludes to that being the case. So I hope that after having heard me read this particular passage many times in the past, as of right now, those who have followed our show would realize that over the 402 previous programs that we have had, especially on Friday nights, we make reference to this particular section to try and help the people to realize the overall power and significance that the Constitution holds in terms of your daily endeavors, your day to day living and surviving. This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law, when it refers to other law, it's referring to substantial, substantive laws that the House of Representatives and the Senate are authorized to make for the governance of the country. But any of those laws must fall within the prescripts of the Constitution. They don't have to have the same wordings or the same words, but they have to have the same intent and outcomes. That is to say, non violating or violation of the Constitution. Whenever they make a law that is violative of the Constitution, they are then in dereliction of their duty and responsibility and their sworn oath to the Constitution, which is, as we have just read, this Constitution is the supreme law of Belize. And if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law, to the extent of its inconsistency, uh, would be void. In other words, they can make a million different laws, and if they don't make it following the constitutional prescripts and the requirements of what the Constitution mandate for them to do in order to create lawful, legal, and constitutional laws, then the Constitution here is self-protective. It says that anything that is inconsistent with the Constitution is void. That's not too difficult for anyone to understand or to be aware of. But it seems to be very difficult for some of our past and present leaders to abide by. That is to say, they choose to be or act as scofflaws in dereliction of their sworn oath and responsibility, and they make bogus laws, put them on the book, and pretend that because they made it and they put it on the book, they are valid, they are constitutional, they are lawful, they are legal, when in fact the constitutional way said they are not. So long as any laws that is made that is inconsistent with the Constitution, as we have seen in the past, where the judges struck those laws down and told the government that they were not comporting themselves legally, lawfully, or constitutionally. As a matter of fact, we have some cases right now that went from the Supreme Court of Belize, the High Court. They went to the appellate court at the second level, and they went to the final jurisdiction of the court at the Caribbean Court of Justice. And those laws, after being ruled on by the Caribbean Court of Justice, became what you call settled law, or as most legal minds would call it, stare decisis. In other words, it's a law that requires foundation adherence to, such that after that law is ruled upon by the highest court, being the Caribbean Court of Justice, as in the case of Belize, that nobody should be violating any such laws. Any such law that becomes a stare decisis law and or a settled law is what the legal prescripts and precepts are in terms of legal requirements and standards of the country. But we have a government right now in place that scoffs at those laws. They don't give a hoot about what the court says. They just do what they want. You know, they're not law abiding. Like I said, they're scoff laws. And when you tell them that They feel like they are supposed to be more offended by being told that they're scofflaws and or by being um, referred to as lawbreakers and not abiding by what the Constitution requires of them. They want to turn around and have, you know, get hot under their collar or get personal and offensive. Nobody should tell them that they're wrong. Of course, there shouldn't have to be a need for anyone to tell them that they're wrong. The Constitution is black and white. Any of us that can read should be able to read and understand. Well, of course, maybe they don't have enough comprehension, so they hire the greatest lawyers in the country, not only just to read and comprehend the law, but to haul and pull the law and to violate the Constitution. As in the case right now where we have taken them to court with the um, with the Section 90 violations, which requires them to have nearly as equal a number of people in each and every electoral division. From 1997, we have been fighting with them on this issue. Governments come in, governments go out. Governments come in, governments go out. And they all behave the same way as a bunch of scofflaws. And I won't get tired of telling them about themselves. That's the least I can do in defense of the law, of the Constitution of my country and the rights of the people. So if they don't like it, tough luck. Just keep violating it, and I'll keep pushing it in your face. As I said, I will keep hanging the Constitution around their neck as an albatross until they can get it changed. And hopefully they will always fail in getting it changed. That is to say, they come now, like I mentioned a little earlier, trying to eviscerate major parts of the Constitution, and in some instances they are proposing that they may even eviscerate the whole thing and create a new Constitution, which is why they went ahead and created what they call a Constitutional Review Commission. Not only did they create that commission, they went ahead and asked the Governor General to have that. Uh, they, they created they went to the House and they created what they call an act. That is to say, an act of Parliament, in which they authorized themselves to ask the Governor General and or the Deputy Governor General to sign that act, under which they are stipulating that by virtue of that act and the ascension to that act, the Governor General is committing sedition against her own boss. Now tell me what kind of onerous people do that kind of stuff. You cannot take the seal of the Governor General, stamp it on a document which intends is to commit sedition. Because that's what they're proposing in the recommendation that they made to the Prime Minister that we have been discussing regularly on Fridays as well. But tonight we can't get into that because I have a different program. But it's just so audacious that these people can be so bold-faced and so onerous to the point of, committing treason and encouraging the people to aid and abet them or assist them in committing that treason. I would like to reread or read over again for emphasis purposes, and hopefully people will remember or refresh in their mind as to this particular section of the Constitution, because it's critical and it has a lot of weight in terms of what is it that I'm about to advocate tonight, in addition to what else we always advocate. And that is to say, section part 1 of the Constitution of Belize Section 2, subsection 1 reads as follows. This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law, such as those made by the House of Representatives, or any other rules, regulations, procedures, protocols that is made for the governance of the country, for example, as in the case of something that I would like to talk about, I'm not sure if I'm going to have the time left to do it, but in regards to police department rules under which they make certain rules that are supposed to be compatible with the Constitution but are not, and they then try to advocate this concept that they have to have rules to govern their institutions, and those rules are actually violative of the Constitution, and they're requiring that those rules supersede the Constitution, which is intolerable. The first part of the Constitution, as I'm reading here, tells you and tells them that any law that is inconsistent, or any rule, any regulations, any authority that they try to grab and write up any kind of bogus stuff that transgress the Constitution is illegal, is unlawful, is unconstitutional, and it's void. There's no legality behind it. This Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law, as I keep emphasizing, is inconsistent with this Constitution, that other law shall, to the extent of its inconsistency, be void. And the reason why I read that is because I want to get into Section 6 of the Constitution. I'll go to Section 6 now. And I'm going to read these things, and later on I'm going to, like go off the rail, because I'm a little hot under the collar right now. Because these people, they keep transgressing our Constitution, and we are paying them not to. We are paying them for them not to transgress our Constitution. Okay? So let me go at Section 6 of the Constitution right now. Just let me push this stuff forward a little bit and let me get to Section 6. Yeah, right there. I got it. Okay. Section 6 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows. All persons, it didn't say all men, right? Nor all women, right? Nor all kids or all babies, right? It says all persons. And it did not say all persons that are of Belizean nationality or extraction. It says all persons, which means whether you're a Belizean or not, so long as you're within the geographical jurisdiction and boundaries of the country of Belize, over which this particular constitution is supreme law, you as a person, regardless of your nationality, all persons, as is stated here, and I'm going to read it again. Section 6, subsection 1 reads as follows. All persons are equal before the law and are equal without any discrimination to the equal protection of the law. So, in the country of Belize, you can be a foreigner, regardless of whatever status you have. The law still protect and preserve your equality as a person. All persons are equal before the law and are entitled, without any discrimination, to the equal protection of the law. If any person is charged with a criminal offense Then, unless charges is withdrawn, the case shall be afforded a fair hearing within a reasonable time by by an independent and impartial court established by law. Every person who's every person who is charged with a criminal offense shall be presumed to be innocent until it is proven or has or until he is proven or he or she has pleaded guilty. So unless you plead guilty or you are judged as being guilty by a court of law, no care, don't, regardless of what crime you may have been charged with, until that case is fully adjudicated, you are presumed to be innocent. And we are talking about all persons, not some persons. The rich elite who can afford a lawyer is also referring to the poor person who has not a penny and cannot afford a lawyer, for which then the system should provide access to a legal defense on behalf of those individuals. Because the law was not made by a privileged few for the welfare and the benefit of a privileged few, which apparently is how some people perceive it to be. The law was made for you and me and everybody else. As I said earlier, I'll read it again. All persons are equal before the law and are entitled, without any discrimination, to the equal protection of the law. I'll read I read paragraph A just now of subsection 3, and I'll go ahead and read paragraph B. Shall be informed, any person that is to be charged for an offense or a crime shall be informed as soon as reasonable, practicable, in a language that he or she understands, of the nature and particulars of the offense charged. As I indicated earlier, regardless of what language you speak, regardless of where you come from, so long as you find yourself within the geographical boundaries of the territorial and integrated country of Belize, you are to be afforded these rights. So tonight we are doing again one of those teachable moments. And I hope the Belizean people is becoming a little bit more informed and recognize what the law stipulates in regards to their rights and the rights of any other person that finds themselves within the jurisdiction of the country. I'll go ahead and read paragraph C of the same subsection 3, which says as follows. They shall be given adequate time and facilities for the preparation of his or her defense. And D, shall be permitted to defend himself or herself before the court in person or at his own expense by a legal practitioner of his own choice. As regards to paragraph E, it continues to say, shall be afforded facilities to examine in person or by his legal representative the witnesses called by the prosecution before the court, and to obtain their attendance and carry out the examination of witnesses to testify on his behalf before the court on the same conditions as those applied in the uh, as those applying to the witness called by the prosecution. And it goes on to say, in regards to the last paragraph in that group, which is paragraph F, those individuals who are accused or charged, who are to be presumed as innocent, also shall be permitted to have without payment the assistance of an interpreter if he cannot understand the language used at the trial. And it goes on to say, under that same subsection, and except with his or her own consent, the trial shall not take place in absence or in his or her absence unless he or she so conducts himself as to render the continuance of the proceedings in his presence impracticable. That is, if the person is throwing a tantrum or misbehaving in court and making a scene or disturbing the orderly process of the court. And the court has ordered him to be removed and the trial to proceed in his absence. As regards to that last part of the statement, uh, I personally have an issue with that and an objection because nobody should be tried in absentia, regardless. Don't care how urgent or how quick or how much of a hurry the system is in and or whoever wants to prosecute is in, nobody should be charged in absentia. If you cannot get the person, well, I wouldn't say charged, but nobody should be tried in absentia. That's something that a lot of countries do, but I think that our country, I believe, should not entertain that kind of onerous conduct. Even if you have to force a person to be present against their will at their hearing, that should be much better than to not have them present for whatever other reason and to try their case in their absence without the benefit of their input. There are other ways how you can make solve those kind of problems. But tonight is not the night for us to discuss those, so we won't get into those as of right now. We'll proceed to read a little further on this same section 6, and we are reading section 6, subsection 3, and I read on. And except with his own consent, the trial shall not take place in his absence, unless he so conducts himself as to render the continuance of the proceedings in his presence impracticable, and the court has ordered him to be removed and the trial to continue or to proceed in his absence. As I said just now, I have a problem with that. Instead of removing the person from the court, they should be able to restrain the person. But the presence of the person must be available as stipulated in the first part of this same paragraph, that the person must be present. His trial should not go on in his absence. So if for whatever reason you feel like the person is creating enough commotion to the point where you have to remove him from the court, the removal of the person from the court should cease the proceedings. It's intolerable to have a court trying somebody in absentia when everybody else have the benefit of producing their evidence and or going through the motions And then you're going to turn around and say, well, if that person then becomes convicted in absentia, tough luck. The court's jurisdiction and rights is to hear. That's what the Constitution commands the courts to do. Hear any and all cases, because the court under Section 95, I think it is given unlimited jurisdiction to hear the case. But if somebody is being tried, they have to be present and need to be present. I'll proceed to finish up that paragraph. It goes on to say, provided that the trial may take place in his absence in any case in which it is so provided by a law under which he is entitled to adequate notice of the charge and the date, time, and place of the trial, and to reasonable opportunity of appearing before the court. All of that sounds good and is good. I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem with the last part that I spoke about earlier. And I believe there are other people beside myself that would have a problem with that, because I, for one, if I were to be accused of a crime, will have to answer in court to a crime. And the judge feel like, because when my turn to speak, I'm not speaking with the kind of temperament that they would like for me to speak, or I'm being loud, my mouth is too big, and I speak in a um, in an exaggerated volume, or however I express myself. The court should be tolerable of people's means of their own defense, and provide their own information, their own ability to articulate. Not everybody that goes to a court is a lawyer, and not everybody that is required to come to a court can afford a lawyer. So the person must speak in their own manner, use their own mannerisms, their own, whatever it takes to be able to convey, even their own sense of outrage. If somebody is being taken advantage of, and they are being railroaded, and you have liars that are being hired by the other person, and this next person doesn't have lawyers or doesn't have the ability to be able to, and they're a little bit agitated, or they don't understand the process of the protocols of the court or the procedures of the court. They shouldn't be sanctioned for that. Yes, it is important for you not to represent yourself. Like they say, only a fool will do that. But sometimes you don't have to be a fool to be put in a position where the only option you have is to represent yourself. And then you have these slick lawyers, they come to the court and they ask for what they call it, delay the case, or to have a change of venue, or to, there are a lot of different technicalities that these lawyers that they use when they don't have a real defense on behalf of their client, right? They frustrate the process of the court, and they have you as an individual, if you're not a lawyer or you don't know how paperwork is filed and what's the timing to file certain paperwork, and you miss out, and your case can be thrown out, even though you might be right or you are correct, just because you don't follow the process and the procedures, because you don't answer certain questions certain kind of way, or because you don't file certain documents when it's required. The system is rigged. I'll leave that part alone. I won't proceed any further with that last statement. I'll just leave that hanging in the air. Subsection 4 reads as follows. A person, that is to say anyone, shall not be held to be guilty of a criminal offense on account of any act or omission that did not, at the time it took place, constitute such an offense. That is, in other words, the reverse of what the government was trying to do the other day. The Constitution tells them that they're not supposed to issue any SOE, which is, in other words, SOE is the acronym or the short for state of emergencies. There's a protocol and a procedure by which the government can get a state of emergency validated and sanctioned and issued. But we have had in our country of Belize in the past, and just recently, as a matter of fact, and we'll probably have it again in the future because of the way these jackals are mismanaging and misbehaving. We have had situations where they declare a state of emergency without any authority behind it. For a state of emergency to exist, there must be, it must be, certain criteria must be met. And for it to be adequately implemented requires certain other process and procedures. The current government, as well as previous governments, have dismissed all those requirements and procedures on issues and pretend that the Constitution itself does not exist. And they go on to do just about what they want to do that comes out of their head. That does not follow the Constitution. So they have been found guilty of dereliction of duty and in violation of the Constitution. But who pays? We, the people. Because the courts have awarded damages to some of these people that have been hurt during the course of these state of emergencies that was not legitimate. And the government comes now and say, okay, well, you know what? We want to make a law that will go back retroactively and wipe clean all previous violations so that we don't have to pay these people any money that the court tells us that we're supposed to pay them. In other words, we're going to annul or take away the authority or the powers or the rights of the court, and we're going to do it retroactively. We're not going to do it in the future, no? Or we're not doing it right now. We're going to do it in regards to past misbehavior of the government. So they make an onerous law stipulating that based on this onerous law, they are then exculpated from all previous transgressions. Hell, man, if that's the kind of world you want to live in, then might as well suspend the law. Suspend one third of the jurisdiction of the governance system. That is to say, the judiciary has an equal level of power and authority in our system of governance when it comes to the separation of powers principles, which says we have three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and we have the judiciary. Now, if you're going to disrespect, you as the government is going to disrespect what the judiciary says and pretend that the judiciary has no authority or power, even though the Constitution says that whatever comes under the judiciary is the sole authority and power of the judiciary. And the government of the day and or the executive parts of the government of the day has to abide by the pronunciations and the findings of the judiciary. And we have these guys wanting to wipe out what the judiciary ruled on by making a law that will retroactively exculpate their misconduct. It's crazy. I mean, it's even ludicrous to believe that in this day and age of the 2026, we have people of that mindset and so onerous. But anyhow, I'll leave that part alone. And that is what this subsection 4 was speaking to. A person shall not be held to be guilty of a criminal offense on account of any act or omissions that did not, at the time it took place, constitute such an offense. And the government is trying to reverse engineer this specific mandate here and accrue it to themselves so that they can exculpate themselves for their past transgressions. And no penalty shall be imposed for any criminal offense that is severe in degree or description than the maximum penalty that might have been imposed for that offense at the time when it was committed. That is to say, in other words, you cannot charge somebody for riding a bicycle up stop. Let's say it was a criminal in this country of the United States, that's a misdemeanor. But let's say in some other country that would be constituted as a criminal offense. Okay? You cannot charge that person for a criminal offense of riding a bicycle up stop and then you turn around and say, okay, well, the penalty for having done so will be the same penalty as that of having committed a murder. You know, because at the time when that person rode the bicycle up stop, the penalty for that crime of riding up stop would have been maybe a few dollars or maybe a couple of days or some like penalty, right? But now you're gonna say, okay, well, he committed this crime at the time when he should have received a light penalty, but now we're changing our mind and we want him to suffer a death penalty. That's what the Section 13 of the Constitution, no, not Section 13, Amendment 13 was proposing. Exculpate the government from their crimes, but turn the system against the civilians and turn them into criminals. We'll go back to that Amendment 13 sometime in the future, because while they have put it currently on ice, or what you say, they have deferred it because of the pushback that people have had against it. They didn't just get rid of it altogether and done. They put it, on abeyance for a future date. So if that's their mindset, we have to also have our mindset accepting that reality and looking forward for future battles on that same issue. Because apparently they don't intend to let it go away or walk away from it. Let me just skip that part of section 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a lot of reading up there. I'm not too sure that I want to indulge in all of those because there's another section that I want to get to right now before I start my commentary. Let me see. Okay, so I did subsection 6. I did section 2. I did section 6, and I'd like to go to section 13 right now. So please bear with me as I spin this electronic copy to section 16. 12, not 12 right now. I'll go to 16. I passed it already. I was going so fast I didn't realize I passed it. Okay, I got it. under subsection 16, it says, we'll read subsection, uh, we'll read section 16 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1, and it says, subject to the provisions of section 4, 5, and 7 of this section, no law shall make any provisions that is discriminatory either of itself or in its effect. In other words, the legislator can't go and make a law that is discriminatory. Why? The Constitution already said there should be no discrimination. It's legal and unlawful and unconstitutional to make a law that punishes people when they try to exercise their own rights or to violate people's rights, as in this case. I'll read this one again. Section 16 of the Constitution of Belize says, subsection 1, subject to the provisions of subsection 4, 5, and 7 of this section 16, no law shall make any provisions that is discriminatory either of itself or in its effect. In other words, the legislature should make no law to discriminate. How then can the police department say that they are making a law to allow them to discriminate, and then they are not in violation of the Constitution? Hello? They go and they make a law, an internal law or rule or regulation, police regulations. They have their own rule book. And in that rule book, they're empowered, according to them, to exercise everything that's within the pages of the cover and the front cover and back cover of that book as being constituted, as per their expectation, lawful, legal, and constitutional. Well, if it violates the Constitution, it's not constitutional. And if it's not constitutional, and it's violative of the Constitution, then it's unlawful, it's illegal, and unlawful. So, Mr. Commissioner and the Minister of Home Affairs should pay attention to what the Constitution says. And as the maximum law people, should not be acting like scofflaws and violating the laws of the country and pretend that they have any power or right or authority vested in them to violate the Constitution and to make laws that are incompatible with the Constitution, as we read earlier under section 2 of the Constitution. Any other law that they make that is inconsistent with the Constitution is null and void to the extent of its inconsistency. I want to specifically say that the issue of that police officer, I think it's Mr. Kowo, I think the gentleman's name is, who had had dreadlocks. How can he be accused of violating the department rules when in fact the law says that there should be no discrimination? We read that earlier. And some young lady who had a problem with the same police department over the same issue of the way they hear, like we are saying in Belize or in Creole, the young lady, they had nappy hair, right? They had Creole hair or black people hair. They didn't have Spanish hair or white people hair or straight hair. You know, they had to struggle on a regular basis to do hair upkeep, and they complain. Now, under the British system, long time ago, it was expected that everybody would follow and abide by a certain dress code or certain comportment. Even though those things were deliberately discriminatory in order for some people not to be able to qualify or to meet the regulations or the rules. So if you want a job in the police department, you have to meet what the police department requires in order for you to get that job. When the Constitution says that nobody should put their foot on your neck and stop you from being able to work in any environment that you want to work or in any job that you want to work, and that you should be facilitated to the extent that you're not causing harm or hurt to anyone. In other words, you're not depriving somebody else of their rights by having your rights being respected and honored. So the gentleman, Mr. Cole, is complaining. First of all, the police commissioner, the young man was elected to a office, and the police commissioner decided that he didn't want to swear the young man in after the young man won the position. That's discriminatory. That's unconstitutional. There should be no rules or regulations or laws that allow or condone such behavior. I don't care if it's the commissioner, I don't care if it's the minister of home affairs, I don't care if it's the prime minister, if it's the governor general, whoever it is, has no rights, either constitutionally, morally, ethically, or when it comes to basic civility or civil rights, to deny this young man of his opportunity to serve in the police department, to have been elected as one of the officers of the police system, and then to have the commissioner with his racial profile behavior as regards to how he treated the previous commissioner, that he will step on this young man's rights, abrogate his rights, and then turn around and want to charge this young man for disciplinary misconduct. When in fact, the court in Belize, the High Court, the Appellate Court, as well as the Caribbean Court of Justice at the highest level of our legal system, has already settled that matter. The case with the young lady that I spoke of earlier went through all those levels of hearings, and the outcome of that case was that they were vindicated and their rights was upheld. So what you have is a stare decisis law, or you say, in other words, settled law, that these jackals are trying to violate and pretend that that didn't happen, or it doesn't exist, or even if it exists, to hell with it, they don't care. They're going to go ahead and do what they want anyhow. That's being scarf law. That's acting in dereliction of duty and out of order. They are the one that's supposed to be penalized and or be subjected to some kind of criminal consequences for their criminal behavior. Now they want to turn around and say, well, because the young man is fighting them, they have a right now to suspend him from his job until they could figure out what they're going to do with him or about him. That is illegal and unlawful. You cannot take your own personal agendas and run the police department under those kind of situation, because somehow or another, you as the commissioner should suffer some consequence for your dereliction of duty and your misbehavior. You, the Minister of Home Affairs, should suffer some consequences. Even if this young man wins his case now, who do you think is going to pay it? As the Prime Minister says, the public. The public treasury going to pay it. So they commit the crime, they hurt people, they laugh at people, they do things that are not necessary and is not right, that the Constitution tells them is not supposed to be done. They scoff at the very laws that they are sworn to uphold. And then they turn around and say, well, okay, the people are going to pay. They should pay. The law should be in such a way or structured in such a way that if they commit a crime, just like any other civilian in the country, because nobody is above the law, just like any other civilians, they should not be exculpated. They should be tried like anybody else and suffer the consequence of the outcome of the trial. That is to say, if they are found guilty of misfeasance or malfeasance or misconduct or bad management or whatever you want to classify it as, they should suffer some consequences. At the least, dock them a few days of salary on the days that they misbehave, you know. They should suffer some consequences. And that is about the only way we will have better policing and better governance. When the people who are wielding the power suffer consequences when they wield that power out of order, when they misuse that power and abuse that power and have other people getting hurt. The public shouldn't have to pay for their misdeeds. We already pay them for a salary for the time that they committed those, when they were committing those crimes. But the average civilian gets to go to jail, has to get a bail, has to go to court. If found guilty, has to go to jail again, for the term of the whatever the court decision requires. Why? They were found committing crime. Why can't we have police officers who are committing crime right, left, and center go to jail? Why should they have to go to their internal affairs department to be exculpated by the internal affairs department? We have had that happen too often. What should happen is that they should have to suffer consequences by being sued in a civil manner. And when they know that they will be held to account for their misconduct, we will have less of it. I'm not going to say that it's going to become a panacea then, and no crimes are going to be committed. But if you have a system in which the officers commit crime, wanton crime at that, knowingly, with any regards to the well-being and safety of the people who they're supposed to be doing police work on behalf. Instead of treating people, they mistreat people. And they get paid as well as exculpated after the fact. Which is why some of them behave the way they behave. If they would lose their job, if they would lose part of their salary, then they'll think twice. Because being an honest, upfront, and a proper police officer, doing your job the way it's supposed to be done, it's not hard to do. Why add the extra onerous behavior, misconduct? And that happens because the problem starts from the high command, the people above. They aid and abet this criminal conduct. And they wash it or they push it under the rug. How are you going to have police officers beating up on their spars, using the power and the authority that they can hide behind being a police officer to commit crimes and that kind of craziness. They should be treated just like any other common criminal, because a crime is a crime, regardless of who committed. Um, I'm getting a little personal here with this stuff. The presentation needs to go on, and I was in my commentary state already, and I hadn't finished did the reading. Let me finish up the reading, and if I don't get to comment, at least the information from the reading is out there. I hope that I'll end up with at least a few minutes before the show is completed. I have another 25 minutes to go at least as a minimum. So just let me go ahead and read subsection 2 of section 16, because this section here is very critical for most Belizean people to understand and relate to. Uh, subsections Section 16 of the Constitution of Belize and subsection 2 reads as follows: subject to the provisions of subsection 6, 7, and 8 of this section, no person shall be treated in a discriminatory manner by any person or authority. Just what I just commented about. How can you have police officers from the lowest rank all the way up to the commissioner being in dereliction of their duty, committing crimes under the color of law, exculpating themselves, and you have the police officer, the Minister of Home Affairs and members of cabinet trying to make laws or rules and regulations that are violative of the Constitution in order to aid and abet these criminals out on the streets who are behaving like a. They say they're out there and supposed to defend the public from the gangs, and they're acting worse than the gangs on the street. They're shooting people. They're gun butting people. They're beating people with nightsticks and with baseball bats and all kind of other implements, breaking people's ribs, breaking people's hands, busting up people's face and doing all manner of criminal action against an unarmed civilian or yeah, when it was civilians, because it's plural. It's not just one person that have been doing this crazy stuff too. It's a lot of people, and they keep getting away with it. The commissioner was put on leave himself for misconduct for 45 days, and before the 45 days was up, he was relieved of that sanction. What kind of craziness is that? If the prime minister has justifiable reason to tell the man to go on leave for 45 days, if he wasn't sure and hadn't done his job, that is the prime minister, to have done due diligence, then he should not have sent the man initially on the 45 days, only to come back and say, well, he's relieving him of the extra days to make up the 45 days, on the premise that, oh, well, the prime minister, didn't send the man on leave. Come and lie to the public. He's going to come and tell us, well, the man has to go on vacation. How the hell are you going to have somebody go on vacation after he's one of the primary person that is being accused of committing an international crime? That's no time for him to go on personal vacation after you don't tell the public that you have sent him off on leave of absence. He should have gone on leave of absence without pay for the type of crime that he was being accused of. Nobody is above the law, not even the prime minister. Okay? And they need to start acting proper. Anyhow, I read section 2 already. Just now, I'll read subsection 3. So I'm reading from the Constitution of Belize, uh, Part 2, Section 16, and I'm about to read subsection 3, having read subsection 1 and 2 before. Subsection 3 says, in this section, the expression discrimination means affording different treatment to different persons, attributable wholly or mainly to their respective descriptions, either by sex or race or place of origin, political opinions, color, that is to say, color of skin, or creed, whereby persons of one such description are subjected to, to disabilities or restrictions to which persons of another such description are not made are not made subject or are accorded privileges or advantages which are not accorded to persons of another such description. That is to say, as in section 6 of the Constitution, which we read earlier, every person is equal under the law. Every person should be equal under any kind of effort, especially as regards to non discrimination matters. You cannot afford one person luxuries or privileges or opportunities that you're denying others. That is not equality under the law. That is discrimination. And when you're going to do that, as in the case now, as I said earlier, with the um, yeah, uh, in the case of the police commissioner, okay, and I'll call name because I don't want to be misconstrued or misinterpreted. Uh, Mr. Rosado, why is it? Well, I shouldn't say it this way. The gentleman is not a dolt or an ignoramus, so there is no reason why he should be conducting himself as if he doesn't know. The man holds a doctorate degree, okay, and anybody who cannot be vested, anybody who is vested with a doctorate degree, has to have some sense between their ears, as well as a little sensibility. Now, he's not a lawyer, nor do I know him to be someone who dabbled in legal matters, other than to say, well, being in the position of chief police officer. But someone with basic common sense. I see someone in the background. I'm sorry, I'm running off. Uh, I think it's Mr. Morrison. Just spare me a second. Let me divert for a second and try and bring him on. I'm sorry. I hope he wasn't sitting there for too long. Um, Good evening, Mr. Morrison. Oh, I should
Good
say good.
evening. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I hope you wasn't there for a long time while I was running off.
No, not too long, not too long.
No, okay. I'm grateful for gracing us with your presence, sir. And I was in the middle of the uh, well, I was just about getting to the point of where I would be making commentary. No, I was first trying to lay the groundwork and read the constitutional parts that would be relevant to what I wanted to speak to. And so I'll just finish read another little part here, so you
Yeah,
can derive
please
the
go
benefit
ahead.
of some
Please
of
go
what
ahead.
I'm saying before I ask you to contribute thoughts, and I haven't given you the chance to.
Yes,
Anyhow, I will proceed then.
please.
I left off where I was speaking about section. I was uh, speaking about section 16 of the Constitution of Belize and subsection 3. I had read quite a bit, but I'm going to go back and reread again for emphasis and just to bring you up to date with what I'm doing, and as well hoping that the people would understand a little bit better what I was trying to say earlier by having heard it at least twice. It says, in this section, the expression discriminatory means affording different treatment to different persons, attributable wholly or mainly to their respective description, either by sex, by race, place of origin, political opinions, color of their skin, or creed, whereby persons of one such description are subject to disabilities or restrictions to which persons of another such similar description are not made subject or are accorded privileges or advantages which are not accorded to persons of another such description. Uh, Subsection 4 of section 16 reads, subsection 1, which I read earlier, of this section shall not apply to any law so far as that law makes provision, for example, as in the case of paragraph A, for the appropriation of public revenue or other public funds, or as in the case of paragraph B, with respect to persons who are not citizens of Belize, and as in paragraph C, for the application in the case of persons of any such description as is mentioned in subsection 3 above, which I just read of this section, or of persons connected with such same individuals or persons, of the law with respect to adoption, marriage, divorce, burial, devolution of property on death, or other like matters, which in the which in the personal law of persons of that description, or goes on as in paragraph B, which is the last paragraph in this section, and I'll stop at that because there are other subsections 5 and others. But I want to get into some of the commentary because we're going to run out of time. And Mr. Morrison, I would like to hear some of his comment on that. Let me finish up this little piece here then. As in D, as I said earlier, whereby persons of any such description as is mentioned in section 3 above of this section may be subjected to any disability or restrictions, or may be accorded any privileges or advantages that having regards to its nature and to special circumstances pertaining to those persons or the persons of any other such description is reasonably justified. Basically, it's just reinforcing what we have said before above. It was just giving a wrapping up, right? To say that discrimination is discrimination regardless of what facade is hidden behind. So that's basically for all intents and purposes for this. Um, uh, Mr. Morrison, I'd like to ask if you have some thoughts that maybe you could contribute to us in regards to any of these matters from your vantage point or perspective or experience. I yield, sir.
Thank you very much, and good evening to our listeners. Well, on these issues of the Constitution, we constantly find that in one way or the other we see some type of prejudice or disregard and unfairness in how um, it's executed in terms of how the government behaves. Um, we I like to bring it more practical to the actual way things are than the technical detail of the Constitution as you put it out, Mr. Brackett. I
Yes, sir.
believe that I believe that government has a responsibility to ensure that the citizens are all treated with respect and dignity and fairness in as much regard as could be given. We know there's always going to be biases and prejudices and stuff within how laws are executed. But they need to kind of make these things as fair as possible to try and represent the interests of the country because that's the only way we get progress and continued development rather than to sink the ship with bias and unequality that would not produce the result of creating a more just society. So I am always of the opinion that everything should be done to ensure that each citizen is regarded under the law with with the utmost of interest and concern that brings about that sort of equality that we aspire for. And we have to remember sometimes Belize has a pretty young constitution, but it is based on the British Constitution, and we need to make sure that the inherent prejudices that is part of that colonial system doesn't leak through to the modern way we need to ensure and secure the welfare of the citizens. So that's my concern and the way I see that sort of uh, characterization that needs to happen in how the government um, addresses and execute and also um, deals with issues in the Constitution that somehow at times create more harm in the way it's executed than the probably the intent that was brought up.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your commentary, sir. Um, just spare me one more second here. Let me
Um, I think also of the structure of colonialism and the dependency creates, and
sure.
for that we need to make sure that our government just recently talked about the constitutional commission, and yes, there are reasons and needs to go about some type of reform and to make these type of changes. There are flaws in what we have. It doesn't necessarily means complete rewrite of our constitution, but it does mean that where we see these inconsistencies that creates or could be used to create harm to the general citizenry, we need to address them, and that is something that uh, it doesn't seem that they're willingly ready to address in a way that benefits the people. Because as I see the Constitution, it's a document that protects the rights of citizens. It's not a document that's supposed to protect the government. It's supposed to enshrine in it is the rights and privileges of citizenship, and it is supposed to protect us against the
Very,
overwhelming power of the state. So that is how I see we could make these type of changes that favors citizenship.
thank you very much again, Mr. Morrison, for that eloquent presentation and summation of those thoughts. Um, in my commentary for tonight, since I'm already running out of time for commentary, I did so much constitutional reading that I didn't leave myself enough time to comment on everything that I was um, reading. But I want to personally contribute a thought in regards to why is it that our leaders whom we elect freely of our own free conscience, you know, following the rules and regulations and even sometimes following some of their bamboozling attitudes towards us, I don't see why is it that they can't give us better governance with what we have, you know, because they should be able to give us better governance rather than just blaming their shortcoming on the fact that we inherited a British system. You know, that's their fallback. Every time they get caught in a corner in regards to their conduct, let me move this stuff out the way here for a second. Yeah. Okay. Every time they get caught in a corner in regards to their own conduct, whether it be with the BTL issue, whether it be with the political issue, whether it be with the Port of Belize issue, whether it be with the Feinstein Island tourism stuff issue, you know, regardless of what it is, our people always get mistreated. We're always forced to accept agreements that these so-called leaders enter into on our behalf, agreements that doesn't accrue to the well-being and benefit and financial backing and support of our country. All these people that they get into business with are basically extractors, and they come to make a hustle, and they don't want to contribute their own fair share of the taxes. Why should we have to give them the head tax on the tourism industry when that is supposed to be how we supposed to make something out of the process? The patrimony is ours. The country is ours. Everything that these people use as a means of making their money, it, it, it's what we have to offer. We should be able to gain a little economic support for the budget of the country in order to run the country. And I resent very much when our government will come to us and say, well, they got to give these people all these kind of benefits because they are the investors, they're going to bring the money, but they don't want to contribute any of that money or leave any of that money for us. For example, in the tourism industry, most of the expenses of those people who come on those ships is paid for on credit cards whose accounts are abroad. Very little of that money comes through to Belize. The money that is being used right now by the tourists when they get to Belize, they try to keep the tourists then on the islands and don't let them interfere with the city like they used to do before when they used to bring a lot of people that would walk around the city and buy little trinkets or buy, a little change will be dropped in the pocket of the local vendors or local community so that they can then spend that money, take care of themselves and their family, and that money goes around one or two or three times in the country before it gets back out the country. But at the end of the day, it's all about extractive actions and behavior. I would like to see where the government would get maybe offered to them, if not demanding of them, on these ventures or business people, that at least 1 or 2% of their profit. I'm not talking about their investment, I'm talking about profits. 1 or 2% of these people's profit would be in some kind of a taxation process where all treasury can be bolstered, can be helped, so the government can have money to take care of the government issues. Private businesses, and private business make their own money and does not contribute. What country does that happen? I don't see that happening here in America. Everybody have to pay their taxes and their dues, even while some of them don't pay as much as they're supposed to because of the loopholes. But they're expected to contribute something. Why can't our country ask the same favor of all these, big industrial companies that come to our country and make their money and just look at us and laugh? Are you back, Mr. Morrison? Uh, we'll take a uh, 4 or 5 minutes,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
elaborate whatever thoughts you
yeah.
have.
Okay, I agree with you, Mr.
Oh,
Brackett.
one more point before we start. Um, we're at the ending of the show almost, so I would like for you to take the opportunity to verbalize not only what I was talking about or contribute as I was asking you thoughts on what I was saying,
Yeah,
what the
okay.
point is for. But to use some of that time, another take a 5 minutes, to use some of the 5 minutes time on something of your own concern that you'd like to, advocate. Some
Yeah,
future
well, yeah,
uh,
it leads
share.
right into what you are saying, Mr.
Go ahead,
Brackett.
sir. I yield
The
back.
the the
About that.
the, the Belize Tourist Board is a statutory board, right?
Yes,
That collects its own taxes from the tourism industry, and that money does not go into the general fund. So that is a problem that we start with in terms of how government
sir.
structured that particular entity. And for that reason, that money have often been misused in political corruption in ways that we can't even imagine. Um, what more importantly has happened as we sort of move ahead in trying to attract tourism is that we had foregone where our true interest is, and that is in food security,
Mm-hmm.
in food stability, right? Um, and food sovereignty. I mean, and in so doing, we have given up the opportunity to make ourselves self-sufficient, and we have remained dependent. And I think I had read somewhere that in Belize, probably about 90% of the food we consume, we actually import.
Yes, sir. That's true.
The problem, I remember the president of Guyana recently went to Belize, President Ali, and Guyana too is a country that has missed in some ways its opportunity to provide food security for itself, although they are doing much better than we are in Belize. But they also have the potential of providing, um, generate great amount of income from food, selling it to other countries, wherever, the Caribbean, Central, Latin America, in the United States, and other countries, Europe and other places. And Belize too has that potential. And so one of the things I hope that comes out of this and that we lean into is that potential that both countries could cooperate in and create a level of independence for the region and for individual countries by allocating um, resources so that we could continue developing our agricultural resource. Belize has lots of arable land that can produce food. What we the, some of the issues we have right now is that we are mismanaging our land, and we're faced with partly at some point in some of the areas that has some of the best farmland is with the Maya land rights claim that we need to make sure we address in a proper way that doesn't create issues for that. We have put a lot of these land too in national reserve in trying to gain up favor with with some of these big European lenders and in securing the blue bond that we have. And so we have to be careful and we need to be thinking smart as a country and as a people to ensure that we develop a resilient economy that's not so much dependent on tourism. Tourism, as we know, is a very fickle industry. One, the two people, just the other day, we had three people died in a hotel from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
Those type of things could create a great swing. We could have a State Department, they're pretty finicky
One
themselves
letter,
right now. We
one
could
letter.
have we could have a State Department the comment that could shake our entire
Mhm.
tourism industry and stop these ships from coming into our shores.
Where do
We're
we go after
spending,
that?
we are spending great amount of resources in developing this industry. There's nothing wrong, I would say, with tourism, but it certainly shouldn't be where we be putting all our eggs in that one basket because we have the potential, we have the strategic capability, we have the land, the resources, and to some degree we have the skill and know-how about farming. We just need to create the incentives as we are doing in some of these other industries, where we are saying, come tourists, we'll give you tax holiday, come, we'll build roads for you. We need to do some of those things. We need to get some focus and do some of those things for the agricultural industry that would create real jobs. And we need to create secondary canning and other type of um,
Mhm.
processing that will ensure that we are not just shipping out raw materials, but providing complete finished goods that are consumable and could be utilized by people in Belize where we stand. We have the Central American, we have the North American, and we have the Caribbean opportunity to sort of sell these products to. And so this is where I would like to see development happens and lending focus. And we know that the Social Security Board is sitting on more money than they could afford to because it is going to create problems for them. It is for them to form partnership. I know we have I forgot the name of the organization that's in Belize that does some bit of manufacturing support and things like that. Um, but we have those opportunities. So what I see is that what this creates for us as we stand right now with just as you mentioned the tourist board and the tourism challenging everything. It's based on what we would say it's the structural dependency and colonialism um, fracture that remain because now instead of um, producing goods, we're using tourism in the same manner. We're not producing anything, and this, believe it or not, the level of tourism we're having is causing a degree of inflation in our country because we're importing all these things and also it causes us our balance of payment and it also causes leakage in profit as you spoke of because we're not getting the proper taxes from all these bookings that is happening overseas. They're not paying the taxes into the government because the money is not accounted for or shows up anywhere in Belize to have it registered for all these tourism. And yet they have a tremendous say in how government function and what government is allowed to do. One example was the seismic, the underwater seismic survey that the previous government was trying to do in the underwater areas out by the Keys and near the reefs. And while the government may have pushed that in a way, instead of presenting it and you know to the people so that they can make a decision with clarity, they pushed it at the last moment, and The boat that was supposed to do the survey, the ship that was supposed to do the survey, was on a limited time because they were just coming off of a survey in the Gulf of Mexico and would
Mm-hmm.
have come into Belize. And because they couldn't wait around for that decision to be resolved properly, the government had to forego it. They had enough opportunity to present it to the people in a logical and clear manner so that they can make a decision. But it was defeated mainly by the tourist board. It was the pushback was mainly by the tourist board that does very little to contribute to the total economy and benefit of the Belizean people. The people that are benefiting from this right now are expats. They're people that and so the same manner of how we used to ship logwood out and ship whatever other product we produce out of the country. It's the same way where our economy is functioning today in terms that, and we still had to buy all the food that was consumed, even though we had fish and all those resources in our water. In fact, some of it may have been caught in our water and sold back to us.
Mm-hmm.
We are ending up still importing and have not changed the structure of how we have food security. So I'll yield back to you, Mr. Brackett, so you can continue.
I'll go on that same food security uh, commentary, sir, and that is to say, it's a failure of imagination and failure of commitment on the part of all system of governance. When I say that, I'm including everybody that has been involved in our governance from the time of independence and even a little bit prior to then, in that they're not developing, as you quite well pointed out in your earlier part of the comment, developing the available options and industries for our Belizean situation. We don't have the ability to have a lot of technologies and all kind of stuff, but we have the ability to do a lot of um, primary farming and developing agriculture and developing food, basic subsistence. We need to get to a point or a place where our Belizean people are willing and happy to help us set the foundation with the right kind of imagination and the right sponsorship on behalf of government and help from the government to coordinate and develop these um, um, potentials. No one person can come and do it on their own. I mean, look at the case of look at Miss Marie Sharp, for example. Everybody admire how that lady persevered in developing her small business into a mega business internationally recognized now. You know how many more people in Belize we have that could have followed that same trajectory? Not maybe only in hot pepper and those kind of condiments and things like those. We could have done that in a lot of other things that Belizeans can produce, and you know, all those ships that are coming into Belize. We could have been supplying them with carrots. We could have been supplying them with potatoes. We could have been supplying them with, um, with just about all the basic things that they need on that ship in terms of feeding that population on each of those ships that comes into Belize every time. If we were to produce the, the items that those people need, they wouldn't have to be taking it with them as part of their journey and part of their supplies, from other places. They could buy it from us. We could have a contract where we supply all those ships, and we could, like you said earlier, sell to other Caribbean countries who don't have the agricultural backbone or the land mass to be able to mass produce like we can. And we can sell at a reasonable price that those people will be able to buy from us. You know, so each different country have potentials. Each country have different things that they can do to contribute as a part of CARICOM. But our leaders are not worried about trying to develop the country in that respect. They want to see somebody come in, develop something, and they get a little share of it. Or they want somebody to come in with some money and give them a little something under the table, and they will facilitate those people making all the millions of dollars even if none of it is left in Belize. That's malignancy, you know, and that's where I have my problem. We could start in Belize by having a lot of small farm. In fact, go back to the days of Mr. Price. Had our government not um, diverted from the plan and the things that Mr. Price was talking about back then about the Green Revolution. That's what Mr. Price was talking about when he talked about Green Revolution. He was trying to encourage small farmers to increase their volume of production, and then the government would have been able to, through marketing board, purchase some of those things for them, or maybe get contracts with local um, vendors, or maybe even foreign vendors. But our government don't think about those kind of stuff anymore. All they think about is how to hustle the ready available cash from whoever have it, and then move on. They're not about nation building. It takes a different mindset and a different commitment and a different heart and a different interest and a different concern. It takes patriotic-minded people to be able to think on that level. We had, like, for example, a man like Mr. Um, oh man, what's the gentleman name gone? Oh, shucks. Ah,
Well,
I'm,
I wanted
go
to
ahead,
say
please.
we see the failure of government when they did drastic moves that closed like Lyman College, the Belize Technical College,
Never had done
where
that.
they're not thinking about the local industry at all. They have lost their way. They do not understand the structure of production and economic development. They do not understand that, and that has caused a great deal of suffering for the young people. When we see the crime in the city today, we have to put the blame exactly where it belongs. The gang violence, the crime is caused by a lack of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And that opportunity is because government failed to plan and failed to create the incentive and the market opportunities so that people can have a dignified existence. And so we kind of look at times and say, my party, whether blue or whether red, but we need to start looking
It,
farther. We need to
but
start looking down the road for what we would call economic prosperity. And we have the opportunity because we have the resources and we have the population that would allow us to have a good, dignified life for all Belizeans. I mean, we look at countries like Honduras, El Salvador, right? I think they're about the same size of Belize,
mm-hmm.
right? They
A little
have
bit smaller.
a little bit smaller, like a few hundred
Yeah.
square miles. I think they're like 8,126 uh, thousand 2,600, and Belize is 8,867. So a little bit smaller, but they have a population of 6 million people. But they have land that they cannot even develop because it sits on mountain tops and such, right?
Mm-hmm.
Belize have relatively flat land. It is true some of it is low lying, but most of it is accessible and could be reclaimed and made very habitable for our population. We have a population of 415,000 people. We do not have that, we should not have that great level of poverty and and lack of um, and the other thing is we are not plagued by that constant violence that those countries had seen in the past. So we have a relatively stable democracy. We are drifting to a level where we're experiencing a high degree of gang violence and random crime, robbery, and stuff in our economy of late, and that will only continue because we are getting the influence, we are getting the arms from the across the border that's threatening our sovereignty.
We made an agreement to facilitate that getting worse. So, our leaders made an
I
agreement.
know, I
They,
know. They talk
they won't
a
dump all the
train and a bridge and all those things without fixing and without creating the infrastructure for national security.
Yeah,
The, the
what I was referring to, Mr.
oh
Morrison, is that our government went and made that a third country agreement so that we can accept all these violent people, everybody that America doesn't want, that they can send to us or to anywhere else. You know, they're not sending us just people that just bodies, just to get rid of bodies. They're sending us people that, I mean, it's going to make our situation worse than we are. That's my concern. You
well,
know,
I agree that is concerning. But I don't know. I'll tell you, because of the current structure of how this administration operates, I don't know that our government had much much opportunity to not take this baggage on, um, as it was presented. I hope we have some say, and I hope we have some say in who we get and so forth, and that we have some limits, structural limits within the framework of that MOB, what memorandum of agreement that they had agreed to.
sir, we do not have to be hostile to the idea or the actions, but we needed to be, first of all, we needed to stand up on our constitution and point out where the government cannot go beyond certain things as regards to what the powers that they have. They arbitrarily and capriciously pretend that they can wield the people's power on the people's behalf without consulting the people. And that's where
Right.
they made the mistake because they're dealing with high powered diplomats, people who know, who deal with small little country like ours as they have described us. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
I
it's
agree. I agree. But if we were principled and standing on our
exactly
constitution, then we could always fall back and say we can't do this in this manner
balls
because of
off.
our
Exactly.
constitution.
No,
But when we
we don't
keep
progress.
violating our constitution just to serve our own interests, then when someone else comes, we can't come back and say our constitution prevents it, because then it looks we have no grounds to stand on. Our leaders have no grounds to stand on.
That's
So
why they are
that
not flying out in the international arena. I mean, the report that came out the other day, it shouldn't have been as bad as it is, but for the fact that our very leaders are the ones that are being caught up in all these wrongdoings. You know, I yield back for another minute or two if you wish to, and just
Yeah,
to
I just want to kind of emphasize that we do need to make sure that government, in its planning and its resource allocation, decide that they reserve the land and they maintain some type of integrity, that they maintain the land that is suitable for agricultural production, and don't um, misuse those land in any way, so that the opportunity to develop them for that type of utilization is forever lost. And so we need to make sure that we're having long-term planning, and we're looking at where our best opportunity for economic development and growth rel um, relies. And certainly, I just want to add, tourism is a great opportunity. It's a quick cash up moment for us, but
it's
it is not long term sustainable, and it's a fragile industry for all the reasons we mentioned. And not only that, it causes us to be dependent on the whims of the powers. While if we create food security, we'll be producing something that everybody needs and wants, and that our internal and security, national security, could be protected when things get tough. I know we're subjected to weather conditions, hurricanes and stuff, and all that, but we have a lot of the area where we have um, opportunity for food security, the land, arable land, is not within the zone of hurricanes. They are prone to flooding, And so we need to develop proper methods of making sure that those areas remain irrigated, drainable, and so forth, so that we can, in times of stormy weathers and stuff, which we are very susceptible to, that we can deal with the water and it does a minimum amount of damage to whatever resources or production we're driven to carry out.
I,
You
uh,
can.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morrison. And I would like to add a little piece more to say that I don't think that we're lacking in talents. I don't think that our leaders and our people cannot rise to the occasion, you know, and meet the challenge. What I see is an indifference as well as a bit of selfishness, you know, and that's what's killing us. Because for what we are talking about right now, which is not all of it anyhow, it's just a little part of it, we could have been much better off if some of these people that we elect for governance would have focused enough on helping the country to move forward. The failure is that they acquire the powers and they sit on the powers unless they're going to suborn it for their own personal gains. You know, they're not about managing. They're not about you know they're not about governance, much less good governance. Let me put it like that. Then they fail to focus on governance, and they just do a little bit here and a little bit there, just to, because so much money is going through their hands. They got to show something, but
But
they're not really applied to maximize and move the place forward, and that's our problem.
I just want to add one little thing. You know, one of the failure is that, like you mentioned, we had the marketing board, we had different type of opportunities where small farming was encouraged, and then we did something politically, and I'm not sure why it was done or how it was done, but then we pushed the Mennonites um, um, program where they took over the role of the marketing board to some
Mm.
degree, where they were buying up the other agricultural products from the other farmers, and they did not act with the true integrity of a market maker. They sought to
So
suppress prices so that the farmers were getting very little for their
I know,
product.
I know that to be a certainty because I have a
Yes.
close colleague, one of our own panelists here on this show, give us nightmares about that.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is real. And so that suppressed the market, and many small farmers found it um, inefficient and unprofitable to continue in farming. And so we destroyed our small cooperative farming that we were developing. I
Look at,
think,
sorry. No, I was
I
saying,
think,
look at the other day when we had so much carrots in the country. Before then, we were saying we didn't have enough carrots. People that went ahead and planted, they had more than enough carrots to feed the whole country. Instead, the government give one of their lackeys a contract to bring in carrots from a neighboring country and let the man the carrots in on the farm that they spend so much time on to produce get wasted and spoiled. The same thing I did with the onion. The same thing I did with the Irish potato. You know,
yeah.
we just
Well,
got
that's what
a lot of nation building.
yeah, that's the problem we have, right? We need to make sure that we have consistency and we have planning. If all we have is the opportunity for quick buck and side deals that undermine the strategic development goal of the country, then we'll forever be floundering, and we will not have any type of economic development and economic growth that could lift the country and lift the people and create that idea of food safety, food security, food sovereignty. Those are where we need to head as we look forward into what opportunity and what would make Belize safe and secure. That is what I'm thinking, sir.
We will have to have a one of our nights and deal more in depth with some of these ideas or thoughts. And let's hope that something good could come out of it. Thank you once again for gracing us with your presence, sir. And uh, I don't know how else to express my gratitude, but the fact is that you
I'm
enhanced
glad to be here, sir.
you enhanced the program a little bit more than what it could have turned out to be for tonight. So I believe that our Belizean people at home and abroad can say thanks to you as well. And I would like to say thanks to them for having spent valuable time listening to what we had to offer and hope that they have gained some positive public benefit from it. Thanks again. This was the Belizean Affairs Show number 403. And we just wish you all God bless weekend. Take care. Be good to yourself and others. God bless everybody. Belizeans at home and abroad. Thank you again, Mr. Morrison. I'll,
Thank you, sir.
I'll be turning off right now.
Okay.